Okay. So today we are going to study operations planning. Not in great detail. So implement operations planning, scheduling, and inventory control processes to ensure optimum use of resources. So in our system, this is all done at the division and the plant. But there's test questions on it, so won't worry about it. So SMI or VMI, I've just heard a lot of suppliers that don't like to be referred to as vendors because they consider vendors to be someone that feels like Coke machines. But then you still hear VMI or vendor managed inventory quite a bit. Inventory system that holds the supplier responsible for managing stocking levels in the customer's plant. So the supplier may or may not own the inventory until it's consumed. That's consigned inventory. We'll talk about that later. So it can be consigned or it doesn't have to be. The supplier will usually offer some type of weekly or monthly consolidated billing via EDI, which is how we deal with fasteners, because we don't want to have to keep track of every stinking screw. It's like, there's the bin, come in, fill it, send us a monthly bill. If you're off by a few, it's not going to matter. So consignment inventory. So when the supplier managed inventory can be consigned inventory, and most women understand consignment. Most men have no clue because guys simply don't roll with consignment clothing for some reason or another. But consignment inventory is a supply chain strategy in which the consignor, the wholesaler, the supplier, etc., gives goods to a consignee, the retailer, to sell. So usually consignment inventory is done in retail. So the consignor or the manufacturer owns the products, and the consignee or the retailer will pay for them once they've been sold. So we do this in manufacturing also, where once the truck rolls off the assembly line, then we pay for the part. And some of our deals are set up that way. Most of them are not. For example, a fastener supplier may stock the bolts and nuts the customer requires in the customer's plant and then replenish the items as needed. The supplier may then send a monthly summarized bill for all the fasteners that were restocked. This would be supplier managed consigned inventory, because we're not paying for them until after we've had them for a month in a lot of cases. In another example, a retailer may strike up a consignment agreement with a fashion designer. Whoop, go ahead.
Rick, I have a question. Do we follow this? Like, do we have any supplier who manages the inventory, consigned inventory at Packer?
Optimus, basically, we probably don't call it consigned inventory with Optimus, but that's basically what it is. Because what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll stock the fasteners for us on the plant floors, and then they'll send us a bill at the end of the month, a consolidated bill. So we've had that inventory in our plant for a month before we pay for it. So it's really consigned inventory. I don't think there's anything that we do where once the truck comes off the line, we then pay for that particular part. I think the closest we come is the fasteners.
Okay, just for the fasteners, not other commodities.
Yeah, there might be some other stuff too, but most of it's the fastener type of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. In another example, a retailer may strike up a consignment agreement with a fashion designer and agree to sell the designer's clothes in store. So the retailer only pays for the goods that are sold and the rest will return to the designer. Now, there's lots of consignment shops for women's clothing around town where you go bring your stuff in there to the store and the store holds on to it till it sells, and then it will pay you once it sells for consignment for used clothing. Guys don't seem to want to do that for whatever reason. I have no idea, but it is very popular with women's clothing. ABC analysis. So Pareto's law says, or the 80-20 rule, A items are the top 10% to 20% of items that generate 80% of the spend. So your most expensive items. These are tightly controlled, they're cycle counted regularly, and they're forecasted because this is where your inventory dollars are at. B items are the next 15 to 25% that are generate about 10 to 20% of the spend. And these are candidates for supplier managed inventory, and they're cycle counted periodically if they're not supplier managed inventory. If they are supplier managed inventory, we don't cycle count them. C items are 55 to 75%, which only generates 5% to 10% of the spend. These items should be supplier managed inventory if possible. And if not, we don't worry about cycle counting them because they're a couple of pennies or a buck, they're screws, nuts, bolts, and washers and all that kind of stuff. So if you're off by a few, maybe you lose $1. If B or C items are inexpensive critical parts that are seldom used, adjust the safety stock levels to compensate. So this is a Pareto, and it's the histogram that's ranked, and then this is called the ogive. Here's a template for you. You don't really need this template anymore. This comes from the American Association for Quality. But you can fill it in here and it automatically does it. You can do this in Excel pretty much nowadays. And it's pretty easy. All right, reorder points. So this is how everybody operated up until the time of the personal computer and the MRP programs. So up through the early 80s. A continuous review type system, orders are placed when inventory is reduced to a certain quantity. Reorder quantity is usually based on usage rates and lead times for the item. So you got a stack of parts, you put a 3x5 card in there at maybe 9 parts up because that's how many you'll use before you get a replenishment based on lead times. The fixed order point is another system. The time between replenishment orders is the trigger. So instead of the quantity and the reorder point system, the fixed order point system is the time. So every week we order a fixed quantity. Well, I guess the order quantity can vary with this system, but most of the time it's a fixed quantity. It's just the time is what they're fixing. Buffer and safety stock, additional inventory held, we know what those are. There's safety stock, how you figure it classically. Fixed order quantity. So this is similar to fixed order point, except the size of the order remains fixed, while the time interval between changes depending on how quickly the items are consumed. So you always order 100. Maybe you order it weekly, maybe you'd order it daily, it just depends. And the way that you usually find the fixed order quantity that is most advantageous in school, it's what they teach you is the economic order quantity or the EOQ, which I haven't really seen anybody use in actual business, but it could be if you're ordering coal or some kind of thing like that it might work. But here's the formula. This is a square root sign. Average annual usage in units, which is pretty easy to figure out. The order cost, which is always kind of iffy. People use, well, what's it cost to create a PO? Well, $100. And then the cost to carry, which is also kind of hard to figure. Then there's Kanban, which means signal in Japanese. And this is much like a fixed order point, or fixed order quantity, rather. Parts are reordered when the signal is given, either a card or a computer record. Usually it's done with 2 bins, 1 bin set up with a fixed quantity. When one is used up, the other takes its place and the signal to reorder is given. So you set up the bin size based on lead times and order quantities. This is a variation of the quantity-based reorder point system. Fixed order quantity usually is what the variation is. Usually part of a lean system since it allows much smaller economic order quantities. Scheduling process, you'll hear a lot of these terms: flow manufacturing, continuous production of a product, and it's only made on customer demand in daily schedules. So flow manufacturing implies a lot size of 1. However many the customer order is for, however many the customer orders for. So you don't make stock. You don't make parts to put in stock. You just make them when you have orders for them. And you need to, the setup needs to be very quick, changeover. Level scheduling usually means the level use of capacity, 3 basic methods. Use inventory safety stock to absorb demand when it exceeds production, but then you're not flow manufacturing. Use lean methods to economically produce small lots, which is flow manufacturing. And capacity bottlenecks are scheduled to balance the line. In flow manufacturing, you're still going to have capacity bottlenecks, so you can only produce so many. Package optimization attempts to minimize the waste of packaging materials, requires analysis of the product and shipping environment to arrive at best cost-benefit trade-off. We have packaging folks on board too that look at this kind of thing. Includes a look at product characteristics, safety, how you're transporting it, reuse of packaging, etc. Shared visibility into inventory. So PACCAR should do some of this, but they don't really do a lot of it. Modern supply chain techniques imply the synchronization of material production and flow throughout the supply chain. So the customer, which is PACCAR, on down to tier 5, should all be using the same SAP system so we can see what everybody's inventory is. Retail has gotten very good at this. That way, when they have sales, they don't stock out. The organization can more effectively plan production to maximize customer service with the least inventory if it can see demand and supply throughout the entire supply chain. So from the customer through tier 1 supplier to tier X supplier. And then you have the bullwhip effect, and you always see questions on this. A small need downstream in the supply chain can produce large fluctuations in the need further upstream due to the timing of production as well as lot sizing. So if you have visibility and synchronization, minimize the effects. So we saw this in the pandemic when everybody started wanting patio furniture because they were all sitting at home. So the stores just started ordering, and supply chain brought it all up. And then everybody went back to work, and all these stores had a ton of patio furniture that they had to mark down and get rid of. That's the bullwhip effect. All right, supply management functional areas. In a small to medium-sized business, PACCAR does not operate this way, nor do many Fortune 500 companies. We split it up into more sections, but in a small or medium-sized business, this is usually how they put it together. Production control has master schedule or detailed scheduling. They get the master schedule and they do the detailed scheduling. These are the guys on the floor. Work order release. Most companies will do work orders of some type. And then expediting parts from the suppliers to the line. And then materials group, which we don't really have at PACCAR, but in a small or medium-sized firm is very common. It's usually got master scheduling, purchasing, inventory control, warehousing, receiving, and shipping. That's usually what makes up the materials group. And they got a materials manager. Then you've got capacity utilization. So if you want to read an article on what that is, your boys at ISM have made a 2 or 3 page article on it. But it's sales forecasts used to help the organization plan the use of capacity. So you use a forecast to put into the SOP or sales and operation plan, which looks at trade-offs of all the functions in the organization to establish a plan to meet demand. And then you implement the schedule when the customer orders are received. it replaces, the customer orders replace the forecast in the master schedule. And then supplier capacity. And this is something we do, create a supply forecast to determine if enough materials, parts, and resources will be available, and consider economic conditions and trends that could affect supplier's capacity. All right. In the ABC analysis classification method of inventory replenishment, what is the most correct answer here?
B.
What do you guys? B, no, ABC is the 80-20 rule.
No, Pareto's law, D.
Yeah, D, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Dog.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I would go with. Better be right. Yep, there we go. All right, one more here. Acme is a manufacturing firm and has been struggling to keep all the required fasteners in stock to make its products. Acme is additionally having cash flow problems, and all of the category managers have been directed to extend terms with the supply base to at least net 60. Which of the following is the best solution for the manufacturer to implement to both conserve cash and keep the required fasteners in stock?
B, beta.
Yeah, consignment inventory that have the supplier manage it. So you don't pay for it till you use it. Oops. Yep, B it is. All these labels nowadays. All right, there's 7 questions out there, so why don't you guys go ahead and start working them? Oh, and if you want to know better explanation of consignment inventory, you can go to this link, which just talks about what it is from the boys at Oracle. And we'll go over answers at 2:25 unless everybody finishes early. Raise your hand. All right, let's go over some answers here. Find the right file. Number 1 is Bravo. Most organizations, master planning and production control are separate functions. Master planning is usually part of materials group. 2 is Alpha, the Bullwhip effect. 3 is Charlie. ABC inventory analysis is not used when calculating the EOQ. And this is the formula. 4 is Alpha. Cycle counting program will pick a small number of A or B items randomly to count each week. Goal is to ensure the weekly counts and computer records are the same. 5 is Delta. ABC analysis uses Pareto's law or Pareto's law that asserts 80% of the outcomes result from 20% of all causes. 6 is Charlie. Fixed order point replenishment system. The time between orders is fixed and the order quantity varies based on demand. So that's what most MRP systems use. And 7 is Bravo. What AFAB needs to do is institute an SOP or sales and operations plan meeting so all the trade-offs in the forecast can be analyzed. All right, any questions? All right. I'll talk to you guys later then.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.